As mentioned, today we're going to be checking out the OBXA synthesizer. This is quite an amazing synth in its own right, clearly one of Oberheim's better designs. We're going to dive deep into it, and we'll also check out some of the things under the hood, literally. So stay tuned. Hello, I'm Roland. This is the Alamo Music Sound Lab. Be sure to hop on YouTube and click on the channel to subscribe. We've got a lot of great videos coming up in the future, and we have a lot of retro videos in the past. Check them all out. Subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about the Oberheim OB-Xa. We'll actually be talking about a lot of things Oberheim, but in specific we'll talk about this OBXA that was down in the basement for a few years and how we've kind of partially restored it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the deficiencies of how it does its thing. And of course, we'll talk about some of the good stuff of everything that is Oberheim. Oberheim. Oberheim OB-Xa. You know the keyboard, you've heard it. It's been on countless hits. It was a big staple throughout the 80s and the 90s. It was just a really cool keyboard. It offered such a huge sound. For me, the OB-Xa is all about big string patches, big brass patches, slow sweeping soundscapes. And of course it did leads and basses pretty good too, but for me it was a pad machine. Oberheim has always been a pad machine for me. Let's talk about the lineage of the Oberheim thing. OBX was the original version of this keyboard, and if you remember that keyboard, it had the kind of like that gray and black panel as opposed to this blue line panel. And the OBX definitely had a bigger sound than the OBXA, but it wasn't really reliable. I mean, tuning was fair at best most of the time. So Tom Oberheim went ahead and redesigned a few things under the hood, and out came the OBXA, which was more stable than the OBX, but still not quite as stable as other keyboards of that era. I'll go so far as to say that I've personally owned a few OBXAs, and every one of those had its quirks and issues. This particular one had a lot of them, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we'll continue on with the lineage. After the OBXA was the OB-8, and the OB-8 was definitely a lot more reliable. It was a lot more stable, and it was a lot more lightweight. Thank goodness, because this thing's pretty heavy and it's really huge. Taking this to a gig was really problematic for a lot of people. Just kind of clunky and, heavy. So the OB-8 was not that. The OB-8 was stable. It was, for me, 95% as good as the OBXA as far as tone is concerned. And for me, that little loss of percentage there was worth the reliability. OB-8 is definitely my favorite Oberheim of that era, aside from the Matrix 12, but we're not talking about Matrix right now, we're talking about OBX. All in all, a really cool keyboard for sure. The problem with these keyboards, at least for me and for this particular one, is tuning it. Every voice card, and this one has 8, every voice card has 2 trim pots for oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and then there's fine tuning for the scaling. So there's really 4 trim pots for every voice card. And I'm going to backtrack just a sec. This particular OBXA was in the basement for a while here at Alamo Music. And when I first saw it in the corner there, I said, I got to see what's up with this thing. I plugged it in, turned it on, and was completely blown away at how far it had fallen. Most of the keys didn't work, and it was completely out of calibration, completely out of tune. The filter was off calibration, but I saw some hope in there. I saw a vision of how to get this back to good. So put it on the bench and spent quite a few days going through it. I got the key bed cleaned out and every key triggers now, which is fantastic. Then I went through to tuning and scaling all the voice cards. And every which one of them did pretty good. After repeated tunings over and over again, it actually stays in tune fairly well, except for that voice card number 1. That one just wouldn't do. It just gave up. It said, I'm out, I'm out. So we disabled that voice card. Right now, this is a 7-voice synthesizer. But for the other 7 voices, it did the calibration really well. It did the tuning, the scaling, and the filter calibration extremely well. I also went in and I detailed all the pots. There was a lot of gunk and junk and dirt and stuff inside these pots and switches. Painstakingly went through each one of them and got them back to good. What can't get good on this thing is the cosmetics. This thing looks like it's been through industrial waste, especially if you look at the back panel. To me, this tells me it's been sitting in a road case for decades. And that road case, that foam deteriorates and gets all sticky. I'm sure you've seen that before. And that sticky foam that disintegrates just really adheres to the surface of the keyboard. So no matter how hard you try to wipe it down and clean it, there's pitting and there's rusting and there's corrosion on this panel. For me, it's not so bad. It kind of looks like an industrial kind of thing, and I kind of like the look of it. It's got some character, it's got some patina, it's got some vibe. Beyond all that, I got it back to 80% working status, and I'm going to play it for you in just a little bit to show you what it does now and what these OBXAs can sound like. We'll also get under the hood, and I'll show you all those little trim pots and stuff to look out for. One of the cool things about this keyboard is that this particular one has the J.L. Cooper MIDI upgrade, which was really, really kind of an expensive thing back in the day. And it also has the 128 voice upgrade. So if you were ever looking for an OBXA, those are the things you'd want out of the OBXA. And this one has it. It just doesn't look too pretty, but that's okay. We're gonna get into it and hear what it sounds like. That's what matters. Okay, so why don't we get under the hood of this OBXA? We'll see some of the features and things that it has inside and some of the problems it gave me along the way. Let's check it out. Okay, so let's check out what's under the hood of an OBXA. Here's those voice cards I was speaking about earlier, and the top layer is 5, 6, 7, and 8, and underneath that's another voice board layer that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if I hit a key, there's a little light LED indicator for which one it is. I'm gonna mute this out so I can show you really quick here. So you can see how it kind of toggles between each voice board. And what you're not seeing is the 4 underneath it being illuminated. In any case, every one of these voice boards is, the dual oscillator voice board. And you have oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 trim pots right over here, and then you have your range and scaling for each oscillator right over here. So to tune these things up, you really have to, get yourself a really good strobe tuner and a sine wave generator, and you really have to kind of move these little trim pots with a little flathead screwdriver until they're nicely in tune, and you do that repeatedly for every single one of them. Pulse width and filter calibration pots are right down here at the bottom range. All in all, what you'd have to do is to get to each one of these voice boards is you have to click off this ribbon cable. This whole panel lifts up, and then you can access the first 4 voices. So this little ribbon cable is what connects all 8 together. Over here on this side, here's that J.L. Cooper MIDI upgrade kit I was talking about. And those MIDI ports are right over here. I went through and I checked out the power supply, and it looks like somebody had replaced some capacitors earlier on before it arrived to us. So power supply was in spec, in regulation. One thing to note, this little click switch right over here, these are the on and offs for each one of those voice boards. So if I wanted to disable a voice card that was not behaving properly, I would just, for example, voice board number 1, bad voice board, bad. Clicking it forward will disable that one. So that as you press a key, it will skip that voice board. And it will play it, cohesively. It's not going to stop and then continue on for the next voice board. It's as if it wasn't even there. So that's a cool thing. I really love that Oberheim implemented that because I think he knew that at one point one of these voice boards would give out, maybe during a live set somewhere somehow. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, pop the panel, disable the voice card, and get back to playing. Cool. The key bed is a Pratt Reed key bed, and this is not your typical key bed. It's clunky and it's old and it's just heavy, and that's what makes it a lot of the weight of this keyboard. These are all metal. And what you'd have to do if you have to replace a key or put a new bushing under the key or clean the key bed is you'd have to unscrew each one of these keys, pop them out, and then you'd have access to the bushing or et cetera, et cetera. I went through and I cleaned the bus bar on this key bed. I did not put new bushings in. It definitely needs new bushings because it's really clacky. It's a clacky key bed. Putting new bushings in underneath each key will allow it to feel better, bounce back better, and not be so clacky. So that's the next task on hand. Later on down the line, I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's just a painstaking process that I just don't want to do, but we're to do it. Of course, here's the boards for all the pots and switches. You know, very old school, very cool. If you ever had to replace one of those, you'd basically just unscrew the panel and then get to soldering each one. These panel boards are connected with these ribbon cables. These are super delicate, so you have to be careful with those. And of course, whenever you're going to dive into repairing a keyboard like this, you really want to take off all of these connectors and clean them out. As you know, oxidation over time, can cause havoc for electronics. And ribbon cables are just notorious for keeping that kind of stuff. Even kind of jarring things a little bit left and right will kind of break away some of that oxidation. But a proper thing to do would be to take off each ribbon cable and just clean it out thoroughly. If you're going to buy one of these OBXAs for your rig, for your kit, for your collection, these are things you want to know about. These are things you want to do to take care of it for longevity's sake. Anyhow, it was cool diving into this keyboard and checking it out and repairing it. It's still got a little bit of ways to go, but we've come a long way, baby. So we've talked a lot about this particular OBXA. Let's see what he can do. I really hope you enjoyed checking out this particular OBXA and all its quirks. For all of what quirks it has, it's still a very cool keyboard, and it did give us some pretty awesome sounds today. It was kind of cool checking out under the hood as well. As always, I'm Roland. This is the Alamo Music Sound Lab. Be sure to hop on YouTube and subscribe to this channel. Lots of cool stuff coming up in the future. And check out the previous videos as well. Thanks for watching.